It was a bitterly cold evening in late winter when Jason decided to take his usual walk through the forest near his home. The heavy snowstorm had been relentless all day, burying the earth in a blanket of white. The air was thick with flakes, and the world seemed to be muffled by the snow. Jason wrapped his coat tighter around his body and pushed forward, the crunch of his boots the only sound in the stillness. As he trudged deeper into the woods, his thoughts were far from the weather. He was still struggling with the loss of his dog, Buddy, a few months ago, a painful memory that lingered in his mind every time he walked these trails. Jason had always found comfort in the solitude of the forest. The quiet escape from a life that felt like it had been turned upside down, but tonight, something was different. A faint rustle broke the silence ahead. Jason stopped in his tracks. It wasn't the usual rustle of wildlife scurrying in the snow. This sound felt out of place. Curious, he moved toward the noise, his breath visible in the frigid air. As he neared a thick cluster of trees, something caught his eye, a small, shivering form half buried in the snow. At first, he thought it was a pile of snow or an abandoned bundle. But then, the form shifted, and he realized it was a dog. Jason's heart lurched. The dog's fur was matted with ice, its small body curled tightly into itself, barely moving. It was freezing, trapped in the snowstorm, struggling to survive. He rushed over, dropping to his knees beside the animal. Gently, he scooped it into his arms. The dog's fur was stiff, its body cold and lifeless, but as Jason cradled it, he could feel a faint warmth, a sign that there was still life inside. "Hang on, little one," he murmured, not knowing if the dog could even hear him. Jason made his way back to the shelter as fast as he could, carrying the dog with every ounce of energy he had left. The snow was still falling in thick sheets, but the shelter was within reach now, its faint light a beacon in the distance. When Jason arrived, the shelter staff took the dog inside immediately. The vet, Dr. Hartley, examined it carefully, her hands moving swiftly as she checked its vitals. Jason stood anxiously by, watching the scene unfold. To his surprise, the dog's condition improved rapidly. What had started as a weak, frozen creature seemed to gain energy by the minute. Its breathing steadied. And its shivering stopped. The vet raised an eyebrow in surprise. "This is strange," Dr. Hartley murmured. "The cold didn't do nearly as much damage as I'd expect, and the recovery rate is exceptional." Jason nodded, but something nagged at him. This wasn't just an ordinary dog. It had been exposed to the harsh elements for far too long, yet it had fought back in a way he couldn't explain. "Is it going to be okay?" Jason asked, his voice betraying his concern. Dr. Hartley gave him a reassuring smile. "Yes, it looks like it. But there's something else. You see this?" She pointed to the dog's ear. Jason leaned in closer, and his eyes widened. There, partially hidden by the fur, was a small tattoo, faint but unmistakable. It looked like a series of numbers, almost like coordinates. Jason felt a chill run down his spine. Why would a dog have a tattoo like that? Dr. Hartley seemed confused. "I've never seen anything like this before. This isn't a typical marker you'd see for identification. It looks more like something else." Jason's mind raced. He didn't know what it meant, but one thing was clear: there was more to this. Dog then met the eye. After the dog was stable, Jason took it home, determined to find out what had happened. As he looked more closely at the tattoo, something clicked in his mind. The numbers weren't random. They pointed to a location, a remote spot in the woods, not far from where he had found the dog. He couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was going on. The next morning, Jason followed the coordinates. His heart pounded in his chest as he trekked through the snow, unsure of what he was about to find. As he ventured deeper into the forest, the path became more treacherous, the trees dense and the air growing colder. But Jason pressed on, his curiosity pushing him forward. Finally, he reached the location, a clearing that seemed eerily quiet. And then he saw it, a small, abandoned facility was hidden among the trees. It was a structure that had been long forgotten, its walls covered in moss and snow. But as Jason approached, he could see signs of recent activity. The door was slightly ajar, and faint footprints led inside. Jason hesitated for a moment before pushing the door open. Inside, the air was musty and stale, but there were signs of modern equipment scattered around. Papers, tools, and even cages, all abandoned but still in place as if someone had left in a hurry. He ventured further, and then he found it, footage from security cameras that had been left running. As Jason clicked through the files, his heart sank. The footage showed a series of experiments on animals, each one more disturbing than the last. The dog he had rescued had been part of a covert project. They had been testing animals for their ability to survive extreme conditions, sub-zero temperatures, isolation, and physical stress, but there was more. The footage revealed that the animals had started to exhibit strange abilities. The dog he had found had been one of the most successful subjects, able to heal faster than normal, resistant to the cold, and with an unervingly sharp intelligence. Jason's blood ran cold. The dog he had saved wasn't just a victim of neglect, it was part of a secret experiment, one that had been abandoned when the researchers realized the animals were becoming something else. As Jason pieced together the story, he heard a sound from behind. He turned to find someone, or something, standing in the doorway of the facility. It was a figure, cloaked in shadow, watching him. Jason realized that the discovery he had made was just the beginning. Whoever was behind this experiment would stop at nothing to retrieve what they had created. And now, he was involved. The dog, his dog, was no longer just an innocent animal. It was a key to something far more dangerous than he could have ever imagined, and as the figure in the doorway stepped closer, Jason knew that the journey he had started would change everything, forever. Subscribe for more stories.